The stars had always been silent. For thousands of years, humans looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. They sent radio signals into the darkness. They launched probes toward distant planets. They built telescopes that could see galaxies millions of light years away. And for all that time, the universe gave them no answer. Then on a cold morning in December, the answer came. It came in the form of 10,000 ships that appeared above Earth like a swarm of metal locusts. They blocked out the sun over entire continents. Their shadows fell upon cities and farms and oceans. People stopped in the streets and looked up. They pointed at the sky. Some screamed, some prayed. Most simply stood frozen, their minds unable to accept what their eyes were showing them. The Velari Dominion had arrived. Supreme Archon Kelveth stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Silence. He was tall, even by Velthari standards. His gray skin was marked with the ceremonial scars of 100 conquered worlds. His forearms were folded behind his back as he watched the blue planet turning slowly below him. "Such a small world," he said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "And they thought they were special." His second-in-command Fleet Marshal Drixal stepped forward. "The humans have detected us, Supreme Archon. Their communication networks are overloading with panic. Their military forces are mobilizing." Kelveth made a sound that might have been laughter. "Let them mobilize, let them prepare. It will make no difference." He had done this many times before. The Velthari Dominion ruled 17 spiral arms of the galaxy. They had conquered over 4,000 intelligent species. Some had been advanced, some had been primitive, some had fought with desperate courage, some had surrendered immediately. In the end, they all fell the same way. They all knelt before the Dominion. Humans would be no different. The first human response came 6 hours after the Velthari arrival. A fleet of ships launched from Earth and Mars and the orbital stations around Jupiter. They were sleek and fast, the best humanity had ever built. They carried weapons that could crack asteroids and shields that could withstand solar flares. Against the Velthari, they lasted less than 20 minutes. Kelveth watched the battle on his display screens. Human ships exploded like flowers of fire blooming in the darkness. Their weapons splashed harmlessly against Velthari's shields. Their formations broke apart as panic spread through their ranks. A few brave pilots tried to ram their ships into Velthari cruisers. They were vaporized before they got close. "Primitive," Drixal observed. "Their technology is at least 3 centuries behind ours." "As expected," Kelveth replied. "Proceed with the pacification." The bombardment began at sunset over the Atlantic Ocean. Velthari ships positioned themselves in orbit and opened fire on military installations across the planet. Missiles rained down like falling stars. Bases in North America, Europe, Asia, and Africa vanished in columns of fire. Command centers were erased. Communication towers were destroyed. Armies that had trained for years were wiped out in seconds. By morning, Earth's military capability had been reduced by 90%. But the humans did not surrender. General Marcus Webb sat in an underground bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. The bunker had been built during an ancient war between human nations, designed to survive nuclear attacks. Now it served as humanity's last military headquarters. Webb was 62 years old. His hair was gray, and his face was lined with decades of service. He had fought in 3 wars during his career. He had seen terrible things, but nothing had prepared him for this. "Status report," he said, his voice steady despite everything. A young officer looked up from her console. Her eyes were red from crying, but her hands were steady. "We've lost contact with Pacific Command, European Command, and African Command. The Asian Defense Network is still operational but heavily damaged. We have approximately 12% of our original forces remaining. And the enemy? We haven't destroyed a single ship, sir. Our weapons can't penetrate their shields." Webb closed his eyes for a moment. He had known this was coming. From the moment those ships appeared in the sky, he had known how this would end. But that didn't mean he would stop fighting. "Send out the order," he said. "All remaining forces are to continue resistance. Make them pay for every inch of ground." The officer hesitated. "Sir, is there any point? We can't win." Webb looked at her. His eyes were tired but not defeated. "Maybe not, but we can show them who we are. We can make them remember that humans don't break easily. And who knows, maybe that will matter someday. The resistance continued for 11 days. Human soldiers fought in the ruins of cities. They used whatever weapons they could find. They set traps in subway tunnels and office buildings. They attacked Velari ground forces with guerrilla tactics that had been developed over centuries of human warfare. And they died. They died in thousands, in millions. But they kept fighting. Kelveth found himself impressed despite his contempt. Most species broke within days. Their will to fight evaporated once they understood how hopeless their situation was. But humans continued to resist long past the point of reason. They attacked even when they had no chance of success. They sacrificed themselves to destroy single Velari soldiers. Interesting, he mused as he reviewed the casualty reports. They are like the Krethval. They fight past the point of logic. Should we be concerned, Supreme Archon? Drixal asked. No. The Krethval eventually broke, as all species do. These humans will be no different. Continue the pacification, increase bombardment of population centers if necessary. On the 8th day, they bombed Tokyo. On the 9th day, they bombed London. On the 10th day, they bombed New York. The great cities of human civilization were reduced to ash and rubble. Millions died in hours. On the 11th day, the governments of Earth requested a ceasefire. The surrender ceremony was held in Geneva, in the ruins of what had once been a great hall of international diplomacy. Human leaders gathered there, their faces hollow with grief and defeat. Presidents and prime ministers, generals and admirals, all of them stood before the Velari delegation and formally surrendered their world. Kelveth did not attend in person. He sent a holographic projection of himself, a shimmering image that towered over the humans like a god looking down on insects. Your resistance was notable, he said, his tone almost kind. You fought longer than most, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Dominion is eternal. You are merely the latest addition to our empire. The human leaders said nothing. They had no words left. You will now be integrated into Dominion society, Kelveth continued. Your resources will serve the empire. Your population will provide labor. Your world will be designated a production center for the soul sector. Obedience will be rewarded. Resistance will be punished. This is the way of things. He paused, his 4 eyes scanning the crowd of defeated humans. In time, you will come to see this as a blessing. The Dominion brings order to the chaos of the galaxy. We bring purpose to purposeless lives. Your grandchildren will thank us for what we have done here today. The projection flickered and vanished. The occupation began immediately. Velari administrators arrived to take control of human governments. Velari soldiers patrolled the streets of every major city. Human factories were converted to produce goods for the Dominion. Human farms were reorganized to feed Velari colonies. Human workers were assigned quotas and schedules, their lives reduced to numbers on spreadsheets. Some humans accepted the new order. They had lost everything. Their homes, their families, their freedom. They had no strength left to resist. They simply wanted to survive. Others could not accept it. Small groups formed in the shadows, whispering about rebellion. They stockpiled weapons. They made plans. They dreamed of a day when humanity would rise again. The Velari crushed these groups efficiently. Their surveillance technology was advanced beyond anything humans had imagined. They could monitor every communication, track every movement, detect every gathering of more than a few people. Resistance cells were identified and eliminated within days of their formation. Within 6 months, organized resistance had effectively ended. Governor Thexarial was appointed to oversee the Sol sector. He was a bureaucrat, not a warrior. He had managed occupied worlds before and took pride in his efficiency. Under his administration, production quotas were met. Civil unrest was minimized. The human population was kept docile through a combination of surveillance, propaganda, and occasional demonstrations of force. The pacification is complete, he reported to High Command after 1 year. The human species has been fully integrated into Dominion society. No significant resistance remains. Production targets are being exceeded by 15%. I recommend reducing military presence to standard occupation levels. High Command approved his recommendation. Velari warships began leaving the Sol system, reassigned to other parts of the empire where they were needed more urgently. Only a skeleton force remained to maintain order. Governor Thexerial settled into his role with satisfaction. Another conquered world, another successful occupation. The humans were no different from any other species. They had fought, they had lost, they had submitted, but there was one human who watched everything with different eyes. Ambassador Elena Vasquez had served humanity's diplomatic corps for 30 years. She had negotiated treaties and trade agreements with nations across Earth. When the Velari arrived, she had been one of the voices calling for peaceful contact, hoping that humanity might find a place in the galactic community through diplomacy rather than war. That hope had died in the bombardment. Now she served a different purpose. The Dominion allowed conquered species to maintain certain ceremonial positions, tokens of their former independence. Vasquez had been appointed as the Human Cultural Liaison, a meaningless title that gave her access to Dominion officials, but no real power, or so the Velari believed. Vasquez stood in the shadows of the surrender chamber on the anniversary of Earth's fall. The Velari had converted it into a museum of their conquest, displaying captured human weapons and artifacts as trophies. Governor Thexerial gave speeches there sometimes, praising the efficiency of the occupation. She watched him speak, her face expressionless. She had learned to control her emotions perfectly. She had learned to bow at the right moments and say the right words. She had learned to appear completely broken, but inside something burned. Vasquez remembered a conversation from many years ago, before the invasion. She had been reviewing a classified report prepared by a think tank, a hypothetical analysis of how humanity might respond to alien contact. One section had stuck in her mind. It described something the researchers called persistence predation psychology. Humans, the report explained, were unique among Earth's predators. They did not hunt with speed or strength or venom. They hunted by following their prey for days, weeks, even months, never stopping, never resting, until the prey simply collapsed from exhaustion. This psychology, the report argued, was embedded deep in human nature. It explained why humans never gave up, why they held grudges for generations, why they would sacrifice everything to achieve revenge against those who wronged them. The researchers had concluded with a warning. Any alien species that chose to conquer humanity would need to eliminate them completely. Half measures would be insufficient, because if even a small number of humans survived, they would wait, they would plan, they would adapt, and eventually they would strike back. Vasquez thought about that report as she watched Governor Thexerial boast about his successful occupation. The Velari had read similar reports, she knew. Their xenopsychologists had studied humanity extensively before the invasion. They had identified the same dangerous traits. They had even created a protocol to address it. Rule number 1. Never let humans believe they have nothing left to lose. But the Velari had grown complacent. They had seen humans kneel. They had watched human resistance crumble. They had concluded that humans were like every other species, that defeat had broken their spirit. They were wrong. Vasquez smiled softly in the shadows. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had accepted a terrible truth and found peace in it. The Velari thought they had won. They thought the war was over. They thought humanity was just another conquered species, destined to serve the Dominion for eternity. They had forgotten rule number 1, and Ambassador Elena Vasquez, the last free representative of a fallen Earth, was going to remind them. Not today, not tomorrow, not even next year. She was patient. Humanity was patient. They had waited millions of years to reach the stars. They could wait a few more years to take them back. She slipped out of the chamber without anyone noticing. There was work to do. Messages to send, networks to build, plans to make. The first war was over. The real war was just beginning. And when it ended, the galaxy would learn why the ancient predators of Earth were never truly defeated. They would learn why you should never corner a human, never take everything from them, never make them feel they have nothing left to lose. They would learn rule number 1, the hard way. 5 years passed under Dominion rule. The first year had been the hardest. Humans struggled to accept their new reality. They worked in factories that produced goods they would never use. They grew food that was shipped to distant worlds. They lived in houses that were no longer truly theirs, on a planet that was no longer truly theirs. Many died from despair. Others died from hunger when the Dominion reduced rations to punish insufficient production. Some tried to fight and were killed in the streets as examples to others. By the second year, the sharp edge of grief had dulled into a constant ache. Humans learned to survive under occupation. They learned which rules could be bent and which would bring death if broken. They learned to bow to Velari soldiers without letting rage show in their eyes. They learned to pretend. By the third year, the pretending had become second nature. Humans went through their days like machines, performing their assigned tasks, saying their required words, showing their expected emotions. Underneath, something else lived, something hidden, something waiting. But the Velari saw none of this. Governor Thexarial reviewed his monthly reports with satisfaction. Production was up, civil unrest was down. The human population had stabilized after the initial die-off. His administrators reported no significant resistance activity. The surveillance networks detected only the usual grumbling, the minor complaints of any occupied population. The humans are adapting well, he told his staff during their weekly meeting. They are learning their place in the Dominion. Within another generation, they will be fully integrated. Their children will know no other life. His subordinates agreed. They had seen this pattern on dozens of conquered worlds. The first generation resisted and suffered. The second generation accepted and survived. The third generation served and thrived. It was the natural order of things. None of them noticed the small changes happening around them. It started with little things. A shipping manifest that was slightly wrong, a communication relay that malfunctioned for a few seconds, a supply convoy that arrived a day late. Individually, these incidents meant nothing. They were the normal friction of any large bureaucratic system. The Velari administrators filed reports, made adjustments, and moved on. But the incidents continued, and slowly, so slowly that no one noticed, they grew more frequent. In the fourth year, a patrol ship vanished near the outer edge of the solar system. It was a small vessel, carrying only a crew of 12. The official report blamed a navigation error. The ship had probably struck an asteroid or drifted into a debris field. Such accidents happened occasionally. 2 months later, another ship vanished, then another, then another. Commander Vrixtal was assigned to investigate. He was a methodical officer who had solved similar mysteries on other occupied worlds. Usually, the explanation was simple: equipment failure, crew incompetence, or occasionally a surviving pocket of resistance with stolen weapons. But this case was different. The disappearances follow no pattern I can identify, he reported to Governor Thexarial. The ships vanished in different locations at different times. Their crews had no connection to each other. Their routes did not overlap. And yet what, Commander? Vrixtal hesitated. What he was about to say sounded paranoid, even to his own ears. Yet when I map the disappearances, they form a kind of boundary, a perimeter, as if something is drawing a line around the system. Thexarial made a dismissive gesture with two of his arms. You are seeing patterns where none exist. Increase patrols, improve maintenance protocols. These disappearances will stop. They did not stop. In the 5th year, the strangeness increased. A colonial administrator on Luna died in his quarters. The official cause was heart failure. But his personal guards reported that his door had been locked from the inside, and his expression when they found him was one of absolute terror. A week later, another administrator died under similar circumstances. Then a tax collector, then a surveillance officer. The deaths could not be connected. The victims had never met. They worked in different departments on different worlds. And yet they were all dead, all seemingly from natural causes, all with that same expression of frozen fear on their faces. Commander Vrixtal expanded his investigation. He reviewed surveillance footage, communication records, personnel files. He found nothing. The humans continued their work as always. They bowed and obeyed. They showed no signs of resistance, and yet Velari officials kept dying. One night, Vrixtal was reviewing data in his office when something caught his eye. It was a background detail in a surveillance image from 3 years earlier. A human worker was carrying a crate across a loading dock. Nothing unusual about that. But the crate's serial number didn't match any shipment in the official records. Vrixtal pulled more images. He found more crates, more discrepancies. Small amounts of material that had been officially recorded as destroyed or defective. Tiny quantities that no one would miss. But over 5 years, those tiny quantities added up. He ran the numbers and felt cold. Enough metal to build a fleet of ships. Enough food to feed an army. Enough fuel to power a civilization. It had all vanished into thin air. Vrixtal brought his findings to Governor Thexariel. The governor listened with growing irritation. "This is impossible," Thexariel said when Vrixtal finished. "You are suggesting that humans have stolen millions of tons of material right under our surveillance, that they have built some kind of secret infrastructure without us detecting it, that they have been planning something for 5 years while appearing completely docile. I am not suggesting anything, Governor. I am reporting facts. The materials are missing. The deaths are unexplained. And there are other anomalies I have not yet investigated." "What anomalies?" "Communications, Governor. We have detected encrypted transmissions on frequencies we do not use. They are brief, scattered, and impossible to decode. They come from everywhere and nowhere. They have been going on for at least 2 years. Thexariel sat in silence for a long moment. His 4 eyes stared at Vrixtal without blinking. "You believe the humans are planning something," he finally said. "I believe we have underestimated them, Governor." Thexariel thought about the early invasion reports. He remembered the warnings from Dominion xenopsychologists about human psychology. He remembered the protocol that had been developed. Rule number 1. He had dismissed it at the time. All conquered species were dangerous until they were broken. Humans had been broken. He had watched them break. He had seen the defeat in their eyes. But what if they had been pretending? "Increase surveillance," he ordered. "Double the patrols. I want every human communication monitored, every human gathering observed, every human movement tracked. If something is happening, we will find it." The increased surveillance found nothing. The humans continued their daily routines without change. They worked their jobs. They returned to their homes. They did not gather in groups. They did not communicate in secret. They did not do anything suspicious. And yet the mysterious incidents continued. Ships vanished, officials died, materials disappeared, transmissions flickered through deep space like ghost signals from a dead civilization. Governor Thexariel grew paranoid. He slept poorly. He jumped at shadows. He began to suspect that his own staff might be compromised, that human agents had somehow infiltrated Velari systems. But how? Humans looked nothing like Velari. They could not disguise themselves as aliens. They could not physically access Velari facilities without being detected. There was no way for them to have penetrated the occupation's security, and yet something was wrong, something he could not see or understand. One evening, Thexariel received an unexpected request. The human cultural liaison, Ambassador Elena Vasquez, was asking for an audience. Vasquez had made this request every month for 5 years. Thexariel had always denied it. He had no interest in speaking with defeated humans. They had nothing to say that he wanted to hear. But tonight, in his paranoid state, curiosity seized him. What would this human say? What could she possibly want? "Grant the request," he told his assistant. "Bring her to my office." Vasquez arrived an hour later. She was old for a human, her hair white, her face lined with age. She moved slowly, carefully, like someone who had learned to make herself small and unthreatening. Her eyes were downcast as she entered, as protocol demanded. "You wish to speak with me, Ambassador," Thexariel said. He did not offer her a seat. Humans stood in the presence of their superiors. Vasquez kept her eyes on the floor. "I am grateful for this audience, Governor. I have requested it many times. I had given up hope." "What do you want?" "I want to offer you a warning, Governor." Thexariel's antennae twitched. "A warning? You dare threaten me?" "Not a threat, Governor. An observation." Vasquez finally raised her eyes to meet his. They were calm, steady, without fear. "Something is changing. Something is coming. I thought you should know." "Explain yourself." "When your empire first arrived, your scholars studied us. Your xenopsychologists wrote reports about human psychology. They identified certain traits that made us dangerous. They created a protocol to manage us. Rule number 1. Do you remember it? Thexariel felt ice forming in his stomach. How do you know about that? We have our own scholars, Governor. We studied your empire as thoroughly as you studied us. Probably more thoroughly since our survival depended on it. We read your reports. We analyzed your methods. We learned how you think. This is treason. I could have you executed. You could, Vasquez agreed calmly. But that would not change what is coming. What is coming, human? Vasquez smiled. It was a small smile, almost sad. I cannot tell you that, Governor. I am merely the messenger. But I can tell you this. Rule number 1 exists for a reason. Your ancestors were wise enough to recognize the danger. They were wise enough to create a protocol. But somewhere along the way, that wisdom was forgotten. She took one step closer. The guards tensed but did not move. You burned our cities, Governor. You killed our children. You took our freedom, our dignity, our hope. You gave us nothing to live for except survival. And then you made your worst mistake. What mistake? You stopped watching. You declared victory and moved on to other matters. You assumed that because we were kneeling, we were broken. But kneeling is not the same as surrendering, Governor. A human on their knees is still a human, and humans never truly give up. Thexariel's hearts were pounding. What have you done? What are your people planning? Vasquez shook her head slowly. I have done nothing. I am old and powerless. But I have watched, and I have seen things that worry me. Patterns in the chaos. Order emerging from apparent randomness. Something is happening, Governor. Something that has been building for 5 years. And whatever it is, it will arrive soon. She stepped back and lowered her eyes again, returning to the posture of a defeated subject. That is my warning, Governor. Make of it what you will. She turned and walked toward the door. The guards looked at Thexariel, waiting for orders. Should they arrest her? Kill her? He opened his mouth to give the command, but something stopped him. He could have her killed. He could torture her for information. But what if she truly knew nothing? What if she was exactly what she appeared to be? An old woman offering a warning out of some misguided attempt to prevent bloodshed? Or what if killing her was exactly what the humans wanted? Rule number 1. Never let humans believe they have nothing left to lose. The humans had already lost everything. What more could he take from them? Let her go, he said quietly, but increase surveillance on her. Monitor every contact she makes, every word she speaks. The guards escorted Vasquez out. Thexariel sat alone in his office for a long time after she left. The station hummed around him with the sounds of normal operation. Ships came and went. Reports were filed. Life continued as it always did. But something had changed. He did not know what was coming. He could not see it, could not understand it. But for the first time since the invasion, Governor Thexariel felt genuine fear. Somewhere out there, in the vast darkness between stars, humanity was planning something. Something they had hidden for 5 years. Something they had built in secret while appearing completely docile. Something terrible was coming, and he had no idea how to stop it. The 5th year ended, the 6th year began, and in the shadows of the galaxy, humanity waited. Their time was almost at hand. The day began like any other. Governor Thexariel woke in his quarters aboard Orbital Station Prime, the massive structure that served as the administrative center for the Sol sector. He ate his morning meal, reviewed his schedule, and attended his first meeting of the day. Reports indicated that all systems were functioning normally. Production quotas were being met. No significant incidents had been recorded during the night. Everything was ordinary. Everything was wrong. Thexariel had not slept well in months. Ever since his conversation with Ambassador Vasquez, he had been haunted by a feeling he could not explain. He had increased surveillance, doubled patrols, and demanded constant updates from his security officers. They found nothing. The humans remained docile. The occupation remained stable. And yet the feeling persisted. Something was out there. Something he could not see. His assistant approached him after the morning briefing. Governor, there is a message for you. Ambassador Vasquez has requested another audience. Thexariel felt his antennae twitch. She has made no request since our last meeting 6 months ago. Why now? She did not say, Governor. She only said it was urgent. For a long moment, Thexerial considered refusing. Vasquez made him uncomfortable. She knew things she should not know. She spoke with a confidence that did not fit her position as a powerless diplomat of a conquered species. But curiosity won over caution. Bring her to the conference chamber, he said. I will speak with her there. The conference chamber was a vast room at the heart of Orbital Station Prime. Its walls were made of transparent metal, offering a view of the stars on all sides. Earth hung below, blue and white and green, a beautiful world that now belonged to the Dominion. Thexerial stood at the center of the room and waited. Vasquez arrived alone. She walked with her head down, her hands clasped before her, the perfect image of a submissive subject. But Thexerial noticed that her steps were steady. Her breathing was calm. She showed no signs of fear. You requested this meeting, Ambassador, Thexerial said. Speak. Vasquez stopped a few meters away from him. She raised her eyes slowly. They were the same as before. Calm, steady, knowing. Governor, I have come to finish the warning I gave you 6 months ago. Finish it? You spoke in riddles then. You told me something was coming, but refused to say what. Was that your idea of a warning? It was all I could say at the time. Things were not yet ready, but now... Vasquez paused and looked out at the stars. Now the time has come. I thought you deserved to know before it begins. Before what begins? The end of your empire, Governor. Thexerial felt a flash of anger. You dare speak such words? I could have you killed where you stand. Yes, you could, but that would not change what is happening. It would not save your station. It would not save your fleet. It would not save your dominion. She turned back to face him, and for the first time, Thexerial saw something different in her eyes. The submissiveness was gone. The pretense of weakness had vanished. What remained was something hard and cold, and absolutely without fear. When the Velari first made contact with humanity, Vasquez said, your scholars studied us extensively. You needed to understand what kind of species you were dealing with. You needed to know our strengths and weaknesses, our psychology, our culture. This is standard practice for your empire, is it not? It is. And what did they conclude about us? Thexerial said nothing. He remembered the reports. He remembered the warnings. They concluded that humans were dangerous, Vasquez continued, not because of our technology or our weapons. Those were primitive by your standards. No, we were dangerous because of what was inside our heads. Something your scholars had never seen before in all the species you had conquered. Persistence predation psychology, Thexerial said quietly. Vasquez nodded. You know the term. Good. Then you understand what it means. Humans evolved on a world where we were not the fastest or the strongest. We could not outrun our prey. We could not overpower our enemies. But we could follow them. We could track them for days, weeks, months, never stopping, never resting, until they simply collapsed from exhaustion. She began to walk slowly around the chamber, her eyes fixed on the distant stars. This trait shaped everything about us, Governor. It made us patient. It made us persistent. It made us utterly incapable of accepting defeat. When a human is knocked down, they get back up. When they are knocked down again, they get back up again. You can beat them, humiliate them, break every bone in their bodies. They will still get back up. It is who we are. It is what we are. We broke your armies, Thexerial said. We destroyed your cities. We watched you surrender. You watched us kneel. You did not watch us surrender. There is a difference, Governor. A very important difference. Vasquez stopped walking and faced him directly. Your scholars understood this. They knew that conquering humanity would require special measures. They created a protocol, a single rule that was supposed to guide all interactions with us. Do you remember what it was? Thexerial's hearts were pounding. Rule number 1. Say it. Never let humans believe they have nothing left to lose. Vasquez smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had carried a heavy burden for a very long time and was finally setting it down. Never let humans believe they have nothing left to lose, she repeated. Your ancestors were wise, Governor. They understood something fundamental about us. A human who has hope can be controlled. A human who has something to protect can be manipulated. A human who believes tomorrow might be better than today can be kept docile. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. But a human who has lost everything? A human who has watched their children burn and their cities fall and their entire world be reduced to slavery? A human who has been pushed past the breaking point and then pushed further still? She paused. That human becomes something else, something your empire has never faced before, something that cannot be stopped by fleets or armies or weapons of any kind. Thexariel forced himself to stand tall. You are trying to frighten me. This is a bluff. It is not a bluff, Governor. It is a reminder. Your empire forgot rule number 1. You took everything from us. You gave us nothing to hope for. You made us believe that the only way forward was through your destruction, and then you made your final mistake. What mistake? You stopped watching. Alarms began blaring across the station. Thexariel spun toward the command console embedded in the wall. Red lights flashed. Warning messages scrolled across every screen. His officers were shouting into communicators, their voices sharp with panic. What is happening? He demanded. A security officer rushed into the chamber. His face was pale with shock. Governor, we are under attack. Ships are appearing throughout the system. They came out of nowhere. They are targeting our defense platforms. What ships? How many? We do not know, Governor. Hundreds, maybe thousands. They are not responding to any communications. Their signatures do not match any known Velari design. Thexariel felt the world shifting beneath him. Show me. A holographic display activated, showing a real-time map of the solar system. Red dots were appearing everywhere, behind asteroids, inside gas giant atmospheres, emerging from the surfaces of moons, dropping out of subspace in positions that should have been impossible to reach undetected, and they were all converging on Velari positions. This cannot be happening, Thexariel breathed. Where did they come from? How did they hide? He turned to Vasquez. She had not moved. She stood calmly in the center of the chamber, watching him with those hard, cold eyes. You knew, he said. You knew about this. I suspected, Vasquez replied. I am only a diplomat, Governor. I was not part of the planning. But I have been watching, as I told you. I have seen the signs, the missing materials, the encrypted transmissions, the strange deaths of your officials. It was all connected, all part of a plan that has been in motion for 5 years. 5 years, this is impossible. We monitored everything. We watched every human, tracked every movement, recorded every communication. You watched what we wanted you to see, Governor. You tracked the movements we allowed you to track. You recorded the communications we intended you to record. Everything else happened in the spaces between. In the blind spots of your surveillance, in the small moments when your attention was elsewhere. Another explosion shook the station. Through the transparent walls, Thexariel could see distant flashes of light as ships engaged in combat. How? He demanded. How did you do this? Vasquez smiled that cold, knowing smile. Do you know what humans are truly good at, Governor? It is not war. It is not technology. It is spite. Pure, patient, endless spite. We spent 5 years eating our own pride. We spent 5 years bowing and scraping and pretending to be broken. We spent 5 years watching our people suffer and die under your rule. And we used every single second of those 5 years to plan your destruction. She stepped closer. Thexariel found himself backing away. We studied your systems until we knew them better than you did. We infiltrated your networks one bite at a time. We turned your own surveillance against you, using it to coordinate our activities while hiding them from your view. We built ships in places you never thought to look. We trained soldiers in facilities you did not know existed. We created weapons using principles your scientists had not yet discovered. That is impossible. Your technology was centuries behind ours. It was. 5 years ago. But humans learn quickly, Governor, especially when we have motivation. And you gave us all the motivation we could ever need. The station shook again. Lights flickered. The holographic display showed Velari defense platforms going offline one by one. Your empire made a critical error, Vasquez continued. You assumed that because we knelt, we had accepted defeat. You assumed that broken armies meant a broken spirit. But you cannot kill a spirit, Governor. You cannot bomb it or burn it or blast it into ash. You can only make it angry. And a human spirit that has been made angry enough is capable of things that would terrify your ancestors. Thexariel's communicator crackled. Governor, this is Fleet Command. The human ships are unlike anything we have ever seen. Our weapons are ineffective against their shields. They are cutting through our defenses like we are not even here. Send reinforcements, Thexariel shouted into the device. Contact the nearest Dominion fleet. Request immediate support. We are trying, Governor, but our communications are being jammed, and... The voice broke off, replaced by static. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing the chamber in dim red light. Through the transparent walls, Thexariel could see the battle raging around them. Human ships moved with perfect coordination, sweeping through Velari formations like a blade through water. Dominion cruisers exploded in silence. Defense platforms crumbled into debris. You forgot rule number 1, Vasquez said softly. You took everything from us, and a human with nothing left to lose is not a victim, Governor. She leaned close. Her eyes glittered in the red emergency lights. A human with nothing left to lose is a predator. The doors behind her opened. Figures stepped through, silhouettes against the emergency lighting. They moved with the precision of soldiers, carrying weapons that hummed with unfamiliar energy. Human soldiers. They should not have been able to reach this station. They should not have been able to bypass the security systems. They should not have been able to get anywhere near the governor's chamber. And yet here they were. Thexariel looked at them, then back at Vasquez. What happens now? Now you learn what happens when you corner a species that refuses to die. Now you watch your empire fall, station by station, world by world, until nothing remains but dust and memory. Now you experience what we experienced 5 years ago. She turned and walked toward the soldiers. At the door, she paused and looked back one final time. I told you I came to finish my warning, Governor. Here it is. Rule number 1 exists because your ancestors knew what we were. They knew that taking everything from us would create something they could not control. They knew that pushing us past our limits would unleash something terrible. And they were right. She stepped through the door. We are what happens when you forget rule number 1. And we are just getting started. The door closed behind her. Governor Thexariel stood alone in the chamber, surrounded by the sounds of his dying empire, and finally understood the magnitude of his mistake. They had not conquered humanity. They had awakened it. Across the galaxy, in the same hour it began. On Velthar Prime, the capital world of the Dominion, Supreme Archon Kael'Veth was eating his evening meal when his personal communicator started screaming, not buzzing with a routine notification. Screaming, the sound reserved for only the most catastrophic emergencies. He activated the device with a gesture. The face of his chief intelligence officer appeared, pale and trembling. Supreme Archon, we have lost contact with the Sol sector. Kael'Veth set down his eating implement. Explain. All communications from Sol have gone dark. We sent probes to investigate. They were destroyed before they could transmit data. Whatever is happening there, it is happening fast. This was unexpected but not necessarily alarming. Communication blackouts occurred sometimes. Technical failures, solar interference, rarely localized rebellions that were quickly crushed. Send a patrol fleet to investigate, Kael'Veth ordered. Report back when you have more information. Yes, Supreme Archon, but there is something else. What? The intelligence officer swallowed hard. We have lost contact with the Proxima Station and the Tau Ceti garrison and the Epsilon Eridani supply depot. Kael'Veth went very still. All of them, at the same time? Within minutes of each other, Supreme Archon. We thought it was a communications malfunction at first, but then reports started coming in from other sectors. Velthari installations are going dark across a dozen star systems. It is happening simultaneously. It cannot be a coincidence. Kael'Veth rose from his seat. His forearms moved unconsciously, checking the ceremonial weapon at his side. Show me. A holographic map of the galaxy appeared before him. It showed the vast territory of the Velthari Dominion, 17 spiral arms spanning thousands of light years. Normally, this map was dotted with green lights indicating active Dominion installations. Now red markers were spreading like a disease. Every system touched by the human occupation was affected. Supply depots were offline. Defense platforms were silent. Patrol routes showed no active ships. It was as if someone had reached into the heart of the Dominion and ripped out a section. "This is impossible," Calveth said. "The humans were defeated. They had no ships, no weapons, no military infrastructure." "Supreme Archon," the intelligence officer hesitated. "There is more." "Tell me." "We have received transmissions from several affected systems. Just before they went dark, they sent distress calls. The reports are disturbing." "Disturbing how?" "They speak of human ships, Supreme Archon. Thousands of them. Ships that appeared from impossible locations. Ships that moved faster than our sensors could track. Ships that tore through our defenses as if they were made of paper." Calveth felt something cold settling in his stomach. "Where did these ships come from?" "We do not know. Our intelligence indicated that the humans had no shipbuilding capability. We destroyed their orbital facilities during the invasion. We monitored their activity for 5 years. They showed no signs of military development." "Obviously, your intelligence was wrong." The officer flinched. "Yes, Supreme Archon. Obviously." Calveth studied the map. The red markers were concentrated around human space, but they were spreading outward along supply routes and communication lines. Whoever was coordinating this attack understood Dominion logistics perfectly. "This is not a rebellion," he said slowly. "This is an invasion." At that moment, every communication device in the Dominion activated simultaneously. It happened everywhere. On warships and space stations, in government buildings and private homes, on planets and moons across 17 spiral arms. Every screen, every speaker, every holographic projector suddenly displayed the same message. A human face appeared, female, middle-aged, with short gray hair and calm brown eyes. She wore no uniform, carried no weapons. She looked like any ordinary human worker, but when she spoke, the entire galaxy listened. "Citizens of the Velari Dominion, my name is Admiral Sarah Chen. I am speaking to you on behalf of the Human Liberation Force. Please listen carefully, because I will not repeat this message." Calveth stared at the image in shock. How had they done this? How had they accessed every communication system in the Dominion simultaneously? 6 years ago, your empire invaded our world. You killed billions of our people. You destroyed our cities. You enslaved our survivors. You believed that you had conquered us. You were wrong. Admiral Chen's voice was calm, almost conversational, as if she were discussing the weather rather than declaring war on the most powerful empire in the galaxy. "For 5 years, we pretended to be broken. We bowed and scraped and accepted your rule. We did everything you expected of defeated people. But we were not defeated. We were learning. We were adapting. We were preparing." On the holographic map, more red markers appeared. Velari installations were falling at an accelerating rate. "You studied us, and we studied you. We learned your technology. We understood your tactics. We mapped your weaknesses. And we waited for the perfect moment to strike." "She is broadcasting from somewhere," Calveth said urgently to his intelligence officer. "Find her location. Destroy her." "We are trying, Supreme Archon, but the signal is being routed through thousands of relays. It is coming from everywhere and nowhere." Admiral Chen continued. "At this moment, human forces are engaging Velari targets across 12 star systems. Your outer defense perimeter has been eliminated. Your supply lines have been severed. Your communication networks have been compromised. You are cut off, isolated, and surrounded." The cold feeling in Calveth's stomach had become ice. "I want to be clear about something," Chen said. "This is not a rebellion. We are not fighting for independence or autonomy. We are not asking to negotiate or surrender. We are here to end your empire." Her eyes seemed to look directly at Calveth through the screen. "You conquered Earth. You did not conquer humanity. We are not a place. We are not a government. We are what happens when you give a species with 10,000 years of warfare exactly 5 years to plan, infiltrate, adapt, and prepare. You studied us. You knew what we were, and you forgot. The transmission showed something behind her, a window looking out into space. And through that window, Calveth could see ships, thousands of ships, an armada larger than anything he had ever imagined. This is your reminder, Chen said quietly. We are coming for you, all of you, every station, every planet, every ship that carries your flag. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. You showed us none, and we have learned from your example. The transmission flickered. Your ancestors created rule number 1 for a reason. They understood what humans are. They knew that taking everything from us would create something terrible. And they were right. Chen leaned closer to the camera. We are your nightmares made flesh. We are the consequence of your arrogance. We are the price you pay for forgetting, and we will not stop until the Velari dominion exists only in history books. The transmission ended. Silence fell across the galaxy. Then, everywhere at once, chaos erupted. On 17 different worlds. Velari military commanders scrambled to respond to an enemy they could not see coming. They dispatched fleets that found nothing but empty space. They reinforced positions that were attacked from unexpected directions. They sent distress calls that went unanswered. The human forces were not fighting like any enemy the Dominion had faced before. They did not mass their ships for conventional battles. They did not target strategic objectives in predictable patterns. Instead, they struck from the shadows, hitting weak points with surgical precision, then vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. Sensor data made no sense. Human ships were appearing from impossible locations, inside asteroid fields where no fleet could hide, behind gas giants where no sensor could detect them, erupting from the surfaces of moons where no life could survive. They had been hiding in plain sight for years, waiting for this moment, and their weapons were terrifying. Velari shields, which had never failed against any known weapon, collapsed under human fire. Velari armor, which could withstand direct nuclear strikes, was pierced like cloth. The humans had spent 5 years studying Dominion technology, and they had found every weakness, every flaw, every vulnerability. Fleet Marshal Drixal, commanding the Dominion's Central Defense Force, watched his tactical display with growing horror. Every engagement was a disaster. Every counterattack was anticipated. Every retreat was cut off. How are they doing this? He demanded. They cannot predict our movements so precisely. His tactical officer turned to him with a face drained of color. Fleet Marshal, they are not predicting, they are listening. What do you mean? Our communications, sir. They are reading our communications. Every order we send, every strategy we plan, every movement we make. They have been inside our systems for years. They know what we are going to do before we do it. Drixal felt the weight of understanding crush down upon him. 5 years. 5 years of apparent docility, during which the humans had been quietly infiltrating every aspect of Dominion infrastructure. They had access to everything: military codes, defense protocols, fleet deployments, personal communications. They knew everything. Can we lock them out? Drixal asked. We are trying, sir. But every time we close one back door, we find 10 more. They are everywhere. We would have to rebuild every system from scratch to be certain they were gone. Then we fight blind. All communications will be conducted by courier ship. All orders will be given in person. We adapt. Sir, that will slow our response time by hours. Days in some cases. Then we slow down. But we do not surrender. Drixal turned to his command crew. They were frightened. He could see it in their eyes. They had never faced an enemy like this. They had never imagined that such an enemy could exist. Listen to me, he said. The Dominion has ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We have faced enemies before. We have overcome challenges that seemed impossible. We will overcome this one too. He pointed at the tactical display. The humans are clever. They are patient. They are ruthless. But they are not invincible. They must have weaknesses. They must have limits. We will find them, and we will exploit them. This is not the end of the Dominion. This is a test, and we will pass it. His words gave his crew courage. They turned back to their stations with renewed determination. But Drixal knew, in his heart, that he was lying. He had read the old reports about humanity. He had studied the protocol that his ancestors had created. He knew what rule number 1 meant and why it existed. The humans had nothing left to lose. They had been pushed past the breaking point and had emerged as something new, something terrible, something that would not stop until it had achieved its goal. The Dominion was fighting for survival now, not for territory or resources or pride, for survival. And Drixal was not sure they could win. Across the galaxy, the lights of the Dominion went out one by one. Systems fell, stations burned, ships vanished into the void. The great empire that had ruled for 10,000 years was being dismantled piece by piece. And somewhere in the darkness, humanity smiled. They had waited 5 years for this moment. They were just getting started. Governor Thexarial had not moved from the conference chamber. The station shook around him with constant explosions. The transparent walls showed the battle raging outside, human ships carving through Velari defenses like predators through a herd. Emergency lights painted everything in bloody red. He should run. He should find an escape pod. He should try to survive. But he could not move. He could only watch as everything he had built collapsed into ruin. The doors opened. Ambassador Vasquez stepped through, followed by a squad of human soldiers. They moved with quiet efficiency, their weapons raised but not firing. They did not need to fire. There was no one left to fight. "Governor," Vasquez said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "It is time we finished our conversation." Thexarial turned to face her. His legs felt weak. His hearts were pounding in an irregular rhythm. He had never felt so helpless. "How?" he asked. His voice came out as a whisper. "How did you do this?" Vasquez walked to the transparent wall and looked out at the battle. Human ships moved through the debris field that had once been the Dominion's Sol Sector fleet. They moved with perfect coordination, each ship knowing exactly where to be and when. "Do you want the tactical explanation or the philosophical one?" she asked. "Both." Vasquez nodded. "Tactically, we exploited your own systems against you. Your surveillance network was incredibly thorough. You monitored every human communication, every human movement, every human gathering. What you did not realize was that we had compromised the monitoring systems themselves. We used your own surveillance to coordinate our activities while simultaneously feeding you false data about what we were doing. That should have been impossible. Your security protocols were designed to keep humans out of Velari systems, but humans had been working in those systems for 5 years. Maintenance workers, data processors, cleaning staff, the invisible labor force that keeps any civilization running. You did not consider us a threat because we were beneath your notice. That was your first mistake. Thexarial thought about all the humans who had passed through his own station over the years. The workers who repaired equipment, the servants who cleaned his quarters. He had never looked at their faces. He had never learned their names. They were just there, part of the background of occupation. "We built an underground network," Vasquez continued. "Not a physical network, a network of people. Every human worker was a potential agent. Every menial task was an opportunity to gather information, plant devices, or adjust systems in small ways. Individually, these actions meant nothing. But over 5 years, they added up." She turned back to face him. "The missing materials you discovered? We moved them a few grams at a time, hidden in waste disposal, mixed with legitimate shipments, buried in accounting errors. The deaths of your officials? We developed poisons that mimic natural causes, delivered through their food, their water, the air they breathed. The ships that have surrounded you? We built them in abandoned asteroid mines, in hollowed-out moons, in places so small and insignificant that your sensors never bothered to look. 5 years, Thexarial said. You spent 5 years on this. 5 years, 7 months, and 13 days, from the moment of our surrender to the moment of our attack. Every single day was planned. Every single action was coordinated. Every single human in the occupation knew their role, even if they did not know the full scope of the plan. Every human? Every human, Vasquez confirmed. That is what your empire never understood about us. You thought of us as individuals who could be controlled through fear and surveillance. But humans are a social species, Governor. We evolved to work together, to trust each other, to sacrifice for the group. When you conquered us, you did not face millions of individual humans. You faced a single organism with billions of cells. Thexerial shook his head slowly. Your own people must have betrayed you. Informants. Collaborators. There are always some who choose to serve the conquerors. There were. We identified them early. We fed them false information that made them valuable to you. They reported exactly what we wanted you to hear. They were part of the plan too, even though they did not know it. The station shuddered again. Through the window, Thexerial could see the last Velari cruiser breaking apart. And now, he asked, what happens now? Vasquez was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer. Now you experience what we experienced. Your empire will fall, Governor. Not just this station or this system, the entire Velari dominion. It will take time. Your species controls a vast territory, but we are patient. We have already demonstrated that. You will kill us all? No, Vasquez shook her head. We are not like you. We do not seek genocide. Your people will survive. Your culture will survive. But your empire will end. Your military will be destroyed. Your occupied worlds will be freed. The Velari will return to your home systems and learn to live as one species among many, rather than as masters of the galaxy. Thexerial felt a bitter laugh rise in his throat. You think the other species will accept that? The ones we conquered? They will demand revenge? They will try to destroy us completely? Perhaps. That is not our concern. We are ending the threat that the Dominion poses. What comes after is not our responsibility. That is very convenient. It is very practical. Humans are good at being practical. Vasquez stepped closer to him. But I will tell you something, Governor. Something personal. She stopped directly in front of him. Her eyes were no longer cold. They were tired, sad. The eyes of someone who had carried a heavy burden for a very long time. I did not want this, she said quietly. When your ships first appeared in our sky, I hoped for peace. I believed we could find a way to coexist. I argued against resistance, against violence, against war. I thought diplomacy could solve any problem. She looked down at her hands. Then you burned Tokyo, and London, and New York. I watched the cities I loved turn to ash. I watched billions of people die because your empire was too arrogant to consider us anything but insects. And something changed inside me. She looked back up at him. I am not a soldier, Governor. I am a diplomat. My entire life has been dedicated to finding peaceful solutions. But your empire taught me something important. Some enemies cannot be reasoned with. Some threats cannot be negotiated away. Sometimes peace can only be achieved through victory. Thexerial met her eyes. And you believe you have won? I believe we have begun to win. The war is not over. It will not be over for years, perhaps decades. But the outcome is no longer in doubt. The Dominion will fall. You sound very certain. I am certain. Do you know why? Thexerial shook his head. Because of rule number 1, Vasquez said. Your ancestors created that rule because they understood something fundamental about humans. We do not give up. We do not accept defeat. We will fight until we have nothing left, and then we will fight with nothing. You cannot break a human spirit by taking things away. You can only make it stronger. She stepped back. You took everything from us. Our homes, our freedom, our dignity, our hope. And in doing so, you created something you cannot defeat. An entire species with nothing left to lose. An entire species united by a single purpose. An entire species that will not stop until it has achieved victory. She gestured to the human soldiers around her. These are your conquerors, Governor, not generals or admirals or great warriors, factory workers, maintenance technicians, food service employees, the invisible humans who kept your occupation running while secretly preparing its destruction. They have no training, no special abilities, no advantages except one. What advantage? They are humans. And humans never forget, never forgive, never stop. She turned toward the door. The station will be secured shortly. You will be taken prisoner and transported to Earth to stand trial for crimes against humanity. Many of your officials will face the same fate. Justice will be done. Not vengeance. Justice. She paused at the threshold. But before I go, I want you to understand something. I want you to carry this understanding with you for the rest of your life, however long or short that may be." She looked back over her shoulder. What is happening now was not inevitable. It could have been different. If your empire had treated us with respect, if you had offered partnership instead of slavery, if you had remembered rule number one, we would have been your greatest allies. Our persistence, our creativity, our refusal to accept defeat. These things could have strengthened your dominion rather than destroyed it. Her eyes were sad. But you chose conquest. You chose cruelty. You chose to see us as insects rather than equals. And so you face the consequences of that choice. She stepped over through the door. Remember this day, Governor. Remember what happens when you forget rule number one? Because the galaxy will remember, and they will never make the same mistake. The door closed behind her. Governor Thexarial stood alone in the ruined conference chamber of his dying station. Through the transparent walls, he watched human ships secure the last pieces of what had once been the Dominion's presence in the Sol system. He thought about rule number one. Never let humans believe they have nothing left to lose. His ancestors had been wise. They had understood the danger. They had created a protocol that could have prevented this disaster, and the Dominion had forgotten. They had forgotten because they were arrogant, because they believed themselves invincible, because they could not imagine that a primitive species from a small blue world could ever threaten their eternal empire. They had forgotten, and now they would pay the price. Thexarial looked at his hands. They were trembling. His whole body was trembling, not from fear, although he was afraid, from something deeper, something he had never felt before. Understanding. For the first time, he truly understood what humanity was. Not a species to be conquered, not resources to be exploited, not insects to be crushed beneath the boot of civilization. Humanity was a force of nature, as unstoppable as gravity, as patient as time, as relentless as entropy itself. You could defeat humans in battle, you could occupy their worlds, you could enslave their bodies, but you could never conquer their spirit, because the human spirit was not a thing that could be broken. It was a fire that burned brighter the more you tried to extinguish it. Thexarial finally understood why his ancestors had been afraid. They had looked at humanity and seen the future. They had seen a species that would one day challenge them for control of the galaxy. They had seen the end of Velari dominance, and they had created rule number one in the desperate hope that it might prevent that future from coming to pass. But the future could not be prevented. It could only be postponed. Human soldiers entered the chamber. They moved with professional efficiency, securing the room, checking for weapons, preparing for the prisoner transfer. One of them approached Thexarial with restraints. "Governor Thexarial of the Velari Dominion," the soldier said, "you are under arrest for crimes against humanity. You will be transported to Earth for trial. Do you understand?" Thexarial looked at the soldier. He was young, probably born after the invasion. He had grown up under occupation, knowing nothing but Velari rule, and yet here he stood, a conqueror. "I understand," Thexarial said. He held out his arms for the restraints. As they led him away, he took one last look at the stars through the transparent walls. Somewhere out there, across 17 spiral arms, the Dominion was falling, world by world, system by system. The great empire that had ruled for 10,000 years was crumbling into dust, and humanity was just beginning. 100 years later, the Velari Dominion existed only in history books. Their worlds were quiet. Their empire was gone. The species that had once ruled the galaxy now lived on a handful of planets, isolated and forgotten. And in the great halls of the Human Confederation, children learned the story of the 5-Year War. They learned about the invasion and the occupation. They learned about the resistance and the uprising. They learned about Ambassador Vasquez and Admiral Chen and the countless ordinary humans who had played their parts in the greatest victory in human history. Most importantly, they learned about rule number one, because the galaxy had learned it too. Every alien species, every interstellar civilization, every intelligence that looked upon the stars and wondered about their neighbors. They had all watched what happened to the Velari Dominion. They had all learned the lesson. Never give humans a reason to remember they were once prey. Never take everything from them. Never push them past the breaking point. Because humans do not break. They bend. They adapt. They wait. And when the moment is right, they strike with a fury that cannot be stopped by any force in the universe. The galaxy learned rule number one, and they never forgot. In diplomatic academies across 1,000 worlds, alien students studied human psychology with careful attention. In military schools, alien officers learned to avoid conflicts with humanity at all costs. In government chambers, alien leaders weighed every decision that might affect human interests. And in the quiet spaces between stars, whispered conversations repeated the same warning. Do not anger the humans. Do not threaten the humans. Do not ever, under any circumstances, make the humans believe they have nothing left to lose. Because humans are not like other species. Humans are the fire that burns, the storm that never ends, the darkness that waits in the silence. Humans are rule number one, and the galaxy would remember forever.